Danny, an experienced truck driver, had seen many things along the road in his days. He was used to seeing oddities and encountering different characters along the way. He considers it to be an expected part of the job. Danny was confident that he had seen it all. Nothing could faze him and nothing could get in the way, or so he thought. He thought he knew it all. But a girl close to losing her life in the cold topped it all. He was just in time to save her, but little did he know there was much more to this well-known girl. This is one encounter that Danny could have never bet on in his life. What could be the story behind this encounter? Was she really in danger? Or was he being set up? It started as a usual day. Danny drove his cargo to its last destination. It had been a long week for the hard-working man, and luckily, it was his week off after this previous shipment, and he was only 4 more hours away from home. But little did Danny know that a terrible snowstorm was awaiting him, and despite being so close, he had to take a break and seek shelter. While his driving skills were impeccable, and his truck was equipped to handle this weather, Danny chose to be safe. Danny started slowing down as he came closer to the gas station, and while carefully hitting the brakes, he saw something in the corner of his eye. He thought it was just the snow playing tricks on him and ignored it. But as he drove further away from the shadow too, he began to doubt his decision. Had he just ignored someone who needed his help? Or did he see a large tree? Well, there was only one way to find out. Even though the storm was getting worse and Danny knew he needed to get to the gas station as quickly as possible, he decided to park his truck carefully on the side of the road and walk back to investigate the shadow. And as he jumped out, he felt the bitterly cold air and knew he had made the right decision. If someone was out there, he had to go and help them. Danny quickly scans where he has seen the figure, and no one is in sight to his relief. He is about to head back when again his eye catches something, but the darkness is half concealed in the snowbanks. The cautious truck driver has no idea what it is. He can't even tell if it's a person, a trash man, or an animal. But he has to find out, or he knows his conscience will never be clear. So Danny jumps the fence and heads into the deep snow, and as he gets closer, he starts making out the shadow. The figure isn't a trash bag or animal at all. Instead, it is a young girl, nearly buried entirely in the snow. She is barely conscious and half frozen. Danny runs to her immediately and looks around to see if anyone else needs help, but he sees nothing. He had no idea how long the girl had been lying out in the cold and how she even got there. He had many questions, but he knew they all had to wait. Right now, the priority is to get her out of the cold and get both of them to safety. The trek back to the truck was long, and Danny nearly slipped twice on the icy road, but thankfully, they made it back safely. Danny cranked up the heater to warm up the teen and drove hastily to the gas station. Thankfully, they arrived without incident, and the truck driver ran inside to ask the employees for help. But since the gas station was in the middle of nowhere and the snowstorm made getting a signal impossible, the employees could do nothing but wait. They wrapped her up in a large blanket and checked on her as best as possible. The girl needed extensive medical help, and the gas station wasn't the right place for her. And just as Danny considered his options, he noticed the girl's eyes were open. She was awake and staring quietly at him. Her dark eyes looked curious and scared. The truck driver slowly smiled at her to not alarm her. He explained how he had found her on the side of the road and that she probably had hypothermia, and as he talked, the girl just stared back at him. He had expected a reaction from her, but all she did was stare at him blankly. And that is when Danny wondered if the girl even knew English. She seemed utterly blank and hadn't said a single word, so he finally asked her, "English, yes?" The girl replied, "No, English." Danny and the employees only knew English, so this would be complicated, but the truck driver still wanted to try his best to communicate and find out what happened to the girl. Danny turned to ask the gas station employees for help, but the minute he looked away, the girl got up and sprinted outside. For a split second, nobody knew what to do. The storm was getting worse, and this strange girl had just run into it, so he quickly grabbed his coat and ran in the blinding storm. Danny didn't even know her name, so he shouted, "Hello!" and "Girl!" But of course, his calling out to the girl was pointless since she clearly didn't understand English. And with zero visibility, Danny had no idea how he would ever find her. He had forgotten to bring his torch with him to find the girl. Danny helplessly ran around the gas station to find the girl, but this time, the chance of helping her again seemed impossible. And just as the truck driver was about to head back, he saw her. The poor girl was huddled on the side of a trash can. Danny quickly went to her and picked her up again, but as he carried her, Danny felt a strange bump against him. The hard item was tucked in the back pocket of her jeans, and Danny knew exactly what it was, so the minute they got inside, he immediately searched her, and he found it very quickly. The gun hid where Danny had felt it while carrying her, and he promptly removed the bullets. The gun was loaded and the safety wasn't even on. One wrong move, and the girl could have ended up hurting herself. But seeing the girl's reaction, he knew that this wasn't her girl. She didn't know how to handle it and looked more embarrassed than anything that Danny had found it. But the gas station employees disagreed with Danny. Instead, they claimed that the girl was clearly dangerous and could even belong to some gang, and they should lock her up, or at least tie her until the police showed up. Danny was outraged. This girl couldn't even protect herself and was barely 16. How would she harm anyone, especially now that they had her gun? But ever the cautious man, Danny threw the bullets into the trash can and completely dismantled the firearm. The gas station employees were paranoid even with the snowstorm and kept asking Danny to tie up the girl. Finally, worried for her safety, he decided to brave the storm and drive the girl to the nearest police station. This was definitely the riskier choice, but he worried the employees might just hurt the girl for no reason but their fear. So he filled his tank, bought a few more blankets to keep the girl warm, got snacks, and headed outside. At that point, the girl started trusting Danny and followed him quickly into his truck. And there, the two of them made the slow and dangerous journey through the storm. And a journey that should have been no more than 3 hours took 9 hours. The storm was relentless and more significant than Danny could have imagined. But finally, they were in the clear after driving without a break or any food. The girl had spent all this time making herself comfortable in his truck and even played several songs for him. The two of them genuinely bonded without ever exchanging a word. Danny felt protective towards the young girl, but it was time to say goodbye. Danny waited at the police station and explained all that had happened, and he noticed that the police officers acted strangely around the girl. They kept double-checking her picture to ensure it was the same person. And without an hour or two, more police officers showed up. They turned out to be FBI again. Danny was forced to explain everything that had happened. Thankfully, they had brought a translator, and finally, Danny found out that the girl was from Brazil. But she wasn't any ordinary teenager, the daughter of an ex-Brazilian prime minister, and she had been kidnapped for ransom. Somehow, the girl had managed to escape but had been overtaken by the elements. Had Danny not stopped to look for her, she indeed would not have made it.